Welcome guys, this is Ola from Stop Me O channel. This is a video that I wanted to make after playing season 1 of The Walking Dead, but I'm glad that I didn't, because I would have to redo it or I would have to make another one because it wouldn't really make any sense. I didn't have enough information after season 1. Now if you don't know, I'm making various gaming videos as well as let's plays. I've been very late with the whole Walking Dead hype. I've only started playing it recently. And recently I played season 1 and I finished season 2 actually yesterday. So it's all very fresh. I'd like to be prepared for this video. I wanted to be prepared and I am prepared, but I don't know, I was thinking maybe I should give it more time. But then again, what's the better time for recording it if not the day after you've played it, when everything is so fresh and when you haven't processed it all yet. This is a video about Kenny. Let's discuss Kenny, the Walking Dead Kenny. Kenny, whom you either love or you hate. I've been told that Kenny is a topic that people found controversial. People still fight about him. I noticed that in my comments section, people still fight about Kenny, even though it's been really years since last season that he was the main character in was released. So I believe 2013, season 2. Obviously this video is about my Kenny and not your Kenny. Like, depending on your choices, your Kenny could have been a different guy. You either supported him in season 1, you supported him partially, you didn't support his decisions, you didn't like him, you liked him, you loved him, you hated him. Believe me, I've met all types of people in my comment section and other comment section. Kenny doesn't leave you indifferent. He never does. And what I thought was a pretty simple, not really complicated character turned out to be the most discussed character probably in most games. I believe I can be objective in that video, at least I'd like to believe so, because I didn't really like Kenny in season 1. He was annoying me as hell. He's really not the type of person that I would ever be friends with, I think. Season 1 Kenny seemed to be a simple person. I didn't even like Kenny in season 1, and yet I ended up in the 20% of players that ended up with Kenny by the end of season 2. I mean, several decisions impacted the outcome. But how did that happen? How did it happen that I went from not being a fan of Kenny to ending up with Kenny by the end of season 2? I mean, where are you, Kenny fans? Where are you? Why are you not there with me in the 20%, huh? Maybe I am wrong. Maybe I made the wrong decisions. I mean, in these choices-based games, there's really no right or wrong. It depends on the person, on your personality, on the way you picture your characters, on your choices, what you want them to be, what you believe them to be, the story that you add to them. Kenny, he was a family man, a loyal man, a simple man, a man of simple values. I suppose, given that it's all happening in America, he would be the type of a person that would vote Republican, I think. He would probably want to build the wall right next to the Mexican border. Now that's not me. That's why I don't think I would be friends with him. That's why I think under usual circumstances, normal life circumstances, Lee, who was a professor, more of an intellectual type, wouldn't be friends with Kenny as well. But Kenny is likable, in a way. If you check out the Walking Dead Wiki page, you can read that while Kenny is known for taking action and showing initiative, his short temper and failure to think things through often get the better of him. However, Kenny is also known to be kind and selfless, as he has been willing to give his life to save someone else's, but can be emotionally unstable towards those who do him wrong. Yet he is aware of this and has admitted to be frightened by it. Kenny is the type of a person who needs a goal, who needs a purpose in his life. He goes from point A to B, seeing things as black and white. So first, his goal was to save Katya and Doug. Then his goal was to get a boat. Then in season 2, his goal was to protect Sarita, and then his goal was to protect AJ. When he sets his eyes on a certain goal, he does everything to get there, regardless of the sacrifice on the way. And I believe this is where he doesn't see things clearly. Kenny doesn't forgive easily. That's a quality that I'm not a fan of personally. Because, for example, if I didn't forgive easily, I wouldn't end up with Kenny by the end of season 2. For example, in season 1, you can stick to him, you can be his pal, you can be his friend, as I was, as my Lee was, yet he'd still abandon you if you didn't agree with him once. It only took one disagreement to sort of break your relationship, his relationship with Lee, which I hated. Personally, for me, it takes much more to sort of break over a friendship. I wouldn't really judge a person based on one decision, and this is what Kenny does. Kenny would often rush to make things happen, things that he didn't really think through, things that could have been handled in another way. At this point, we're still talking about his personality, but what about his actions? In season 1, the thing that I hated, the first thing that I really disliked that he did, was failing to save Sean. We asked him to help us, and yet he grabbed Doug and ran away. This was a coward's move. Again, I understand where he was coming from. He was trying to save his son, that's why I forgave him, and I was okay with it. I was like, fine, that's one mistake. He should have helped us. That was the morally right thing to do, but he didn't. But I understand. Although I already, at this point, I was like, I have to be careful with him. I'm not really certain what I think of him. It wasn't that serious yet. But then, when he decided to smash Larry's head because he presumed that Larry would turn, even though Larry wasn't really quite dead yet, this is where I actually had a problem with him. Fair enough, I did help him do it. Mostly because I panicked, I didn't have much time, and honestly, I often sort of expect some other outcome than what I end up with. So we ended up smashing Larry's head. I was part of that. But I hated it, and that's a decision that I deeply regret. If I could change one thing about season 1, I would change that decision. I don't care about what Kenny thinks. Now, I helped him, but then I confronted him about him. I told him that this was a wrong move, and even though, again, I understand where he was coming from, he was trying to be pragmatic, yet again, his daughter was there. He chose like a terrible way to deal with that. I mean, there were like 4 grown-up people in there. We would have handled a zombie. I mean, we could have handled it if we didn't rush to make it happen. This is where I decided that I'm not a big fan of Kenny. But then second part of the season, he also showed us that he's selfless and that he's willing to sacrifice from himself for others. I believe this is where he sort of changed. Of course, what changed him most was Katya's and Doug's death. Probably mostly Doug's death. This is what broke him. This is what triggered his depression. We know that Kenny was a man with serious anger management issues. He couldn't handle his emotions too well. So to have that much of a trigger, someone die, that must have hurt. That must have broke him. We know that he started drinking, that he was drinking that whiskey that actually accidentally we gave to him, but there was still something good left in him. He was trying to redeem himself. He helped Krista. He was fighting Ben all the time. It was so annoying. He was fighting Ben, but then he actually sacrificed himself to save Ben. Now, this is a kind of a man that I want Kenny to be. This is the kind of a man that I'd like to believe that Kenny is, the type of a man that stayed with my Clementine in season 2. We thought that he was dead. He wasn't dead. I knew that he wasn't dead because I saw that video in my recommended feed. The name of that video was, I believe, We Do Not Talk About Kenny. Hence the title of my video. But I'll get back to that video later on because I watched it. That's the first thing I did after finishing season 2. So I knew that he'd be back, and he was back. He was back. And he just felt different in season 2. I really caught it very, very late, but he changed his haircut. He had a beard Before that he only had a mustache, so yeah, I'm not really that observant. But it was more to it, obviously, more than just a beard. He had a girlfriend, or a woman, a partner, however you'd call it. Her name was Sarita, and she was Indian. Now, I wouldn't expect Kenny to start dating an Indian woman, but that's a minor digression, I might be wrong on that. He was with Sarita and it seemed like he was happy again. Although, when we showed up, us meaning Clementine, I believe it brought back some of his trauma after Doug's death. Turns out he wasn't talking about it. He wasn't talking about it even to Sarita. We know that it brought back his trauma because he called us Doug by accident when we chose to sit with him during the dinner. That evening, it was one of the best moments in season 2. When I saw Kenny, I was so happy. I was very happy to see him. I know that Kenny being a link to Lee, what's left of him, is not really a good enough reason to support Kenny throughout season 2, but at the moment it really felt like Lee was there. I mean, the group that we joined, the new group, so Luke and these other people that I already forgot, we've only been there for a couple of days with them. And Kenny, Lee, we've spent months with them, if not even a year. So to me, it seemed natural that Clementine would prefer to stay with Kenny, sort of, that she'd pick him. Not because he was all that was left of Lee, but because I'd like to believe that at this point, she would know better and she'd rather stay with someone she knows really well rather than with a group that she doesn't even know if she can trust. I mean, we know that they're okay, mostly Luke, but she spent a couple of days with them, and this is the apocalypse. You have to depend on people you know, not Luke and others. Unfortunately, that new group that we brought to him, it was being followed by Carver, the scamp psychopath dictator who wanted us dead. And long story short, it led to Saritas' death. She died because we showed up in there. Now this was yet another tragedy in Kenny's life, something that broke him again. Now I'm not trying to be the type of a person who sort of explains people's behavior by saying that bad stuff happened to them, but it kinda is that way. Saritas' death broke Kenny yet again. And the worst thing is, we were there when Sarita died. We could have chopped off her arm. I didn't know that was an option, I didn't notice it, but later on I found out that it wouldn't have saved her either way. So we weren't really to blame. Now personally, I hated it when Kenny blamed me for Saritas' death. I know that he was in a moment of grief and misery and that he was hurt and he suffered deeply because yet another thing was taken away from him. But I think it wasn't fair to blame an 11-year-old. Again, I understand his motives. But it's like, how many times do I have to say that I understand your motives, but you're not acting really that cool? Do you see what I mean? There's only enough times that I can say that. And after that, we're done. But he did apologize for it, and he did regret it. But he became way more aggressive again. His anger management issues returned, and when he had a chance to beat up Arvo, so the Russian gang member, he did. Now problem is our new group didn't really like it as much. Fair enough, they only knew Kenny for a couple of days, so you see a guy, you know him for a couple of days or weeks, and then he's beating people up, which is not really needed or reasonable. You don't really trust him. Now, among people who didn't trust him was Jane. Jane was a person that I really liked. Some of you thought that because of the fact that I liked her, I would save her instead of Kenny in that final choice. But as I said before, liking someone or disliking someone is not a good enough reason for me to save someone when we're talking about people's lives. But I'll go back to that later on, to that final choice. Jane, she was a representative of liberal values, of a strong independent woman, and I liked that. I liked her a lot. She was fun. At the same time, I felt like there's something weird, like especially by the end of episode 5, when she was trying to turn us against Kenny, and they were all trying to do it. Now Kenny, yeah, he lost it, but I was trying to support him. I felt like it's important to be his friend. I mean, when are you supposed to be someone's friend? When everything's fine? When everyone's happy? When there's no problems? Is that when you're supposed to be a friend? Or when there's a problem? When someone's depressed? When someone's angry? When someone's grieving? I believe this is when you have to support someone. At the end of the day, this is why I supported Kenny in season 2. I only knew Jane for a couple of days, and yes, I liked her. She would probably be my friend. I liked her more than I liked Kenny, obviously, but Kenny was Clementine's friend, and I found it so important that she would be there for him. Kenny found a new purpose. He supported Rebecca, which was a nice thing to do, by the way, and they didn't seem to notice that. He supported Rebecca, and then he was helping with AJ, even though Sarita died the very same day. They all expected him to help with the boy, because he was the only one with child experience, and they didn't really ask, "Hey Kenny, are you okay after Saritas' death? Can you handle helping with the newborn?" No, they were like, "You know what, Kenny, you gotta help with the boy," and he did. He stepped up. This is another thing that he did that wasn't really appreciated in season 2. It just feels like they didn't really like him. This is my impression. I think this was a group of young people, and they didn't really like being pushed around by a more experienced person. Obviously, all of them were sort of trying to be friends with Clem. They all wanted to be that one special person in Clem's life, and when Kenny reappeared, he was it. He was the oldest friend that she had, and he was all that was left of her old life with Lee. That Kenny and Jane conflict led up to the final decision: stop Kenny or look away. I chose to look away. Now, obviously, I could explain myself by saying I didn't want to shoot someone, because looking away seemed like the option where I would sort of push away the responsibility from myself. But I'm not the type of person to use that cheap of an excuse. I know that looking away meant Jane's death. At this point, I don't really know why I went for Kenny. I think for the reasons that I mentioned. He was misunderstood, and I didn't feel like he deserved to die over that petty of an argument that Jane started, by the way. I didn't know it at this point, but what Jane did was horrible. Horrible. I liked her, but there's no explanation for what she did. She hid a baby, and she told Clem to watch what happens now, just to trigger Kenny, knowing that he's vulnerable again, knowing that he lost Sarita. I mean, that sucks. Come on, you don't do it. That's practically illegal. She hid a baby in the car, surrounded by walkers, just to trigger Kenny. I mean, what if she had died? And she did. What if we didn't hear that baby's crying? That baby would have died in that car. Unless she left a note somewhere like, "Hello, I left the baby in that car," we wouldn't have known. The baby would have died and it would be on her. I can't explain that. This is why I felt that saving Kenny was the right choice. That very reason. Of course, I didn't know it at the moment of saving him, but as I was thinking about it all day long yesterday, this is the conclusion that I came to. I picked the traditional Republican Kenny over a liberal Jane because I didn't felt like what she did was right, and because I felt like Kenny is Clementine's friend, more than Jane. She barely knew Jane at this point, and she already let her down within those couple of days. Let's remember, she did leave. I mean, she came back, so that's okay. But she left. I was surprised with my final outcome, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it made all the sense in the world. That season 2, to me, it was about Kenny. I watched that video that I already mentioned. It's called "We Don't Talk About Kenny." It was a good video, a proper video, a nice one. I enjoyed watching it. It was like 20 minutes long, and around the 15th minute, the guy went too far and he called Kenny an abusive stepfather, and that it's the point of that game is to recognize that. Now I disagree with that. I think the point of season 2 was actually Clem and Kenny's relationship. It was a backbone of that entire season, their friendship, and what you do with that, what you decided to be. I saved Kenny and then I decided to stay with him, even though he offered to leave us at Wellington's. I just assumed that if I saved him, the natural thing to do would be to stay with him, because this is the road that I picked. When I told Kenny, right next to Wellington, that he told me how to be stubborn, I realized something. This is not what Kenny taught me. If Kenny taught Clementine one thing, it would be how to be loyal. And since I consider Clementine a child of both Kenny and Lee in a way, I think Clementine took loyalty from Kenny, and that the fact that she was a good friend. If she took one thing from Lee, it was being understanding and forgiving other people. After all, Lee was Kenny's friend, so Clementine should be too. This is what Lee would have wanted. I mean, yeah, Kenny lost it, but as I said before, this was the time to support him. This was the time to be his friend. I mean, we're talking about Apocalypse. He's not going to go into therapy. He only needs a friend. And right there, next to Wellington, he was willing to sacrifice himself yet again for us. And he was willing to let go of himself. Now, I made sure that Clementine was there to stop him and to make sure that he doesn't let go. I can only hope that Kenny would change with time and that he would learn from Clementine how to be more tolerant and more understanding and how to think things through before rushing decisions. I just wasn't ready to give up on Kenny. I believe he does have these qualities that are not as obvious, that you have to sort of look for, but the qualities that I would support, the qualities that I would be on board with. That he can be a good friend, that he can learn how to be more understanding, that he can learn how to manage his anger better. And what also made me believe it? The moments when he talked about Katya and Doug. He almost sounded like a poet, especially in season 2, when he said that all he wants sometimes is to touch Katya's face again.
I thought I enjoyed that time away from him, from my family. But I'd give anything for one more second with them. To play catch with Doug. To touch Katya's face. Anything in the world.
Now these moments truly touched me, and I don't believe a bad person, a mean person, a person that we should give up on, would ever express himself that way, with that sensitivity. The nice Kenny was in there, you just had to look for him and support him, and sort of ignore the qualities that are annoying as hell. As you know, I'm a lawyer and I give people chances every single day, people much worse than Kenny. So it's in my blood to be understanding, it's in my blood to forgive people and to sort of be able to look through these bad qualities and to look past them. And to see a better person, a person that someone can be, not a person that they currently are. Now, as I said before, I am still on the middle ground with Kenny. But I don't believe he deserved to die in that snow. I don't believe he deserved to die because Jane decided to provoke him. No, this is when he needed someone's help. And that someone was me, Clementine. I supported him because I don't believe that he was an abusive monster. I believe that he was just misunderstood and he lost it. Now don't get me wrong, I am not saying that I love him. All I'm saying is that he didn't deserve to die. And he deserved another chance. I hope you enjoyed that video, I hope you understood my explanation. If you did, remember to leave a like, a subscribe for more gaming videos and let's plays. I'm always ready to discuss, so comment away. Thank you for watching. This was Ola from Stop Me O channel. Bye.